Good morning, Sharon Lutheran Church, and anybody who is tuning in. Welcome to Community Connections. My name is Pastor Dominique, and on Mondays we gather together to take a look at a resource and a spiritual practice that we can use to center ourselves during this time. And today is Easter Monday, and Easter, so it's not just a day, it's not just a holiday that we celebrated yesterday, it's an entire season that actually goes on for 7 Sundays and will end as we begin the season of Pentecost at the end of May. So over these next 6 weeks, we really settle into and hear and live and breathe this Easter story and what it meant for the disciples and what it might mean for our lives today. We settle in for 6 weeks into this story that is the best news ever told. Also, maybe some of the most confusing or mysterious news ever told, that Jesus, who was arrested and humiliated and killed on a cross and laid in a tomb with a large stone rolled in front, 3 days later rose from the grave and was seen by his disciples, and they spread this good news to the world around them. But not without some confusion and some questioning and even some fear and some grief. And we wrestle with those questions now as well. Like, how did this happen? Why did it happen? What did it mean for the world? And what does it mean for us today, especially as we're in the middle of a season that maybe feels a little more like Good Friday than like Easter at times? What does this story hold for us today? What good news? So I want to start by just reminding us of some pieces of this Easter story that we read yesterday. And if you want to read along or take a look at this story, it's from John chapter 20, verses 1 to 18 is the story that we centered worship on yesterday. And there's some parts of this that I think just really reflect and speak to where we're at today. It says that all of this story took place while it was still dark. It says, early on the first day of the week, while it was still dark, Mary came to the tomb and saw that the stone had been removed from the tomb. So she ran and went to Simon Peter and to the other disciples and to the one whom Jesus loved, and she said to them, "They have taken the Lord out of the tomb, and we do not know where they have laid him." So this Easter story, the best news ever told, what we usually kind of celebrate without even questioning because we know the end of the story on Easter Sunday, begins in darkness and with confusion, begins with admitting the question, we don't know where Jesus is. We don't know where they've laid him. We're not sure where he's at in the midst of this. And after she tells the disciples this, they run to the tomb to see for themselves. And some, it says, believe. And so perhaps that means they believed and understood that Jesus had rose from the dead and believed some of the things that he had told them while he was still alive. Perhaps some of them just believed Mary, that she was right, he was indeed gone, and still had lingering questions. But others really were still in grief and not sure what to make of it. And Mary, actually, it says, stood outside of the tomb weeping, just overcome by grief. And while she was standing there weeping and kind of blinded by that grief, there were angels among her, angels or messengers from God came to be with her in that moment. And even Jesus himself stood with her, but she did not recognize him until he said her name. And then in hearing his voice, she realized who it was. And I'm assuming she probably wanted to run and embrace him out of excitement and out of confusion. But what Jesus says to her is, "Do not hold on to me, because I have not yet ascended to the Father. But go to my brothers and say to them, I am ascending to my Father and to your Father, to my God and to your God." So Mary Magdalene went and announced to the disciples, "I have seen the Lord." Now, like I said, usually on Easter Sunday, I don't know about you, but at least I sort of maybe take this story for granted. I know the end of the story. I know that it's worth celebrating. In fact, sometimes on Good Friday, I have to sort of make myself settle into the grief of it because I know that the good news is coming. But we're in the midst of a time when we're not really sure what the end of our current story looks like. We don't know what tomorrow holds or next month or what the end of this virus will look like exactly. We're not sure what story we'll tell to generations that come after us about how all of this went and how all of it ended. But what we do know, because we know that God is with us while it is still dark, that there are angels or messengers among us, people sharing God's message and God's love among us, that Jesus is with us while we weep, and that God is working all things together for good. So while we don't know the end of the story, we know that through it, there will be new life. So while we look for that new life and while we wait for it and we hold on to it and we trust in it, we look for the angels among us, for God's message among us, for when Christ is with us as we weep and as we question, we listen for Christ's voice and trust that we too will see the Lord in all of this. And so my practice for all of us today is called Godly Play. And this is a resource or a philosophy, way of teaching that really allows you to not just hear a story, but kind of immerse yourself in it. It's often used in like Sunday school classes or teaching youth, but it is beautiful and it has opened my eyes to look at stories in different ways. So I'm going to post a couple of links from the Godly Play Foundation in the comments of this video, and both of them will be around Easter. One is the faces of Easter, and one is the mystery of Easter, and both of them are really great, really beautiful videos. And the reason that I would love for us to check these out is because all of the questions asked in a Godly Play story time are I wonder questions. So questions that don't have a right or wrong answer, questions that allow us to just sort of settle in to God's mystery and to open our minds and hearts to what God might be teaching us or what we might be wrestling with ourselves through this story. So I invite you to listen to those, to think for yourself on the I wonder questions that they ask. And then the prayer practice that we can engage in together now and that you can continue to engage in each day this week until we meet again next Monday is an I wonder prayer and an I see new life prayer. So the I wonder is just settling into this Easter season, into the best news ever, but also the most mysterious story ever, and settling into the things that you still wonder about your own life, about the COVID-19 situation, about the story of Easter, about God, and then also looking for places that you already see new life. So even though there's pieces of our reality right now that still feel like darkness, we are starting to see what God is up to and starting to see signs of new life in the midst of this. So I'm going to lead us in an I wonder and an I see new life prayer now, and then invite you to post an I wonder and or an I see new life comment of your own in the comments of this video. So please pray with me. God of mystery, we settle into the sort of unsettling reality that we don't know the end of this story, that there's still a lot of unknowns. And settling into that, it's also strangely peaceful to know that you are a God of mystery and that you are at work in all of it. And I wonder when this will be over. I wonder when we will gather again to worship in person. I wonder what good you are up to in the midst of this darkness. I wonder how you are healing the earth. I wonder how you are bringing people together. I wonder how you're calling me and everyone listening to this to be your messengers, your angels on earth. I wonder how Christ is present with us, comforting us. And in the midst of this, I also see new life around us already. God of resurrection, I see new life in snow melting and grass starting to change colors. I see new life in photos and videos of little ones shouting that He is risen. I see new life in a new generation learning the best news ever, learning this story of Holy Week. I see new life in the resiliency of your church and of all people. We trust that you're with us and you hear us and you are at work in our world and in our lives. Amen. So please comment one I wonder and one I see new life, or either of those, in the comments, and we'll hold one another in prayer this week. Know that you are held in prayer by myself and by all of Sharon's staff, and may peace be with you.